Two guys and a gal talking about movies. Two guys and a gal talking about movies. Two guys and a gal, they're talking about movies. And you know they are really groovy. Two guys and a gal talking about movies. Two guys and a gal talking about movies. Two guys and a gal, they're talking about movies. And we know they are really groovy.
Good evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world. And I am feeling groovy tonight because we have a rarity. We have a special guest, which is Cary Harrison. He's going to weigh in on his top 5 and some honorable mentions sci-fi movies. And to do the exact same thing, we have your hosts, Manny Zamora and Rory, man of 1,000 voices, Penland. And let's bring up our special guest.
Three guys and a girl talking about movies. Three guys and a girl talking about movies.
There you
go.
Well,
we lost
and
the
I think Rory just demonstrated he is a man of 1,814 voices.
Yes, exactly.
Give or take a few. I know you might. I know you don't like the Clint Eastwood.
I do like that one.
Yeah. And he actually started out in sci-fi movies.
Did he really?
He's the pilot that kills the tarantula in the movie Tarantula.
Really?
And he's in one of the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies. I think it's Revenge of the Creature.
Would they need a little eye candy or something on the set?
Yeah, they just needed somebody with a big Adam's apple sticking out, you know.
Well, it's like Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah.
Starting with, Forbidden Planet, very serious as the captain. And then later in the Poseidon Adventure, very, very serious for Irwin Allen. Way before The Naked Gun and O.J. Simpson, who we just sadly lost. And I know we're all still disappointed. I've done nothing but mourn. Nothing but mourn for days.
I've heard a lot of jokes way too soon. This is what happens.
Well,
when you get away with murder, you're infamous.
Yes, that's right. What a loss.
That's infamous. That's more than famous. Oh.
And famous.
And what?
You're in famous.
Famous, yes.
All right. Well, shall we get rolling, gentlemen?
Well, nice that we brought that to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
But okay. Somebody else who's also done a few sci-fi movies in his time. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we could just do the entire show with Rory recreating scenes from all these movies
from sci-fi films.
Sci-fi films. Exactly.
I'm gonna jump in this pod now. Can I come out the other side? Maybe. Yes. No. Possibly.
Possibly. Yeah.
All right.
I hope there's no insects or anything in there, to turn into something weird. All right. So sci-fi. As is tradition on the show, when we have a guest, they have the privilege of going first. So, since Cary's our guest today, what's your number one sci-fi film?
Well, I have to say, I don't have a number one anything. It's like, how many books have you read in your life? What is the number one? I mean, there's a lot of good ones, but to try to put one better than the other, I would say the one that I remember the most, that I react to the most, that I would think probably affected me the most would have to be The Day the Earth Stood Still, directed by Robert Wise. There, look at that. Yeah. That's the original, right? With Gort, the real Gort, not the remake that was done in the 90s with Keanu
Reeves. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm a space alien police guy.
What a horrible, how dare 20th century, how dare they do that?
Yeah.
The day the Earth stood still. Thank you, Rory.
Smacks you in the face with how bad it is.
It was just so bad. The original, I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's black and white.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was done in, I want to say 1951.
51.
51, yeah, okay. Yeah. And it was done after, really 5 years after the second bombing of Japan, where immolated were hundreds of thousands of human beings. This had never happened anywhere in human history. And Robert Wise, a gay man, who also did a lot of World War II movies, a lot of World War II, and also, of course, The Sound of Music. Did a whole lot of stuff, but this was his interesting way of being able to tell the story of here's what happens when Earth goes crazy. Now, remember, the day after, not the day the Earth stood still, the day after World War II ended, the United States entered into a Cold War with Stalin. So Russia, having watched Hiroshima and Nagasaki, understanding that Nagasaki actually did not need to happen. What? No. Our history books tell us we had to take out both. No. After Hiroshima, the Japanese went right into surrender. Are you kidding? They saw what had happened. It took out this giant industrial city. It smoked 70 to 80,000 people in under 3 seconds. It was so horrific. It stopped the fleet, everything. They were in mid-surrender, but we had spent some $4 to $6 billion developing these nuclear weapons, and we hadn't tested the second one, which was a different kind of bomb. Now we're talking plutonium, the most brutal man-made substance ever devised by a twisted mind. And when you invest all of this infrastructure, all of this money, you pay all of these people, you build a good bomb, and then someone says, yeah, but they're surrendering. What are you going to do? You're going to wait 4 days and use it. Now, how do we know that this really happened that way? Well, we were encircling Nagasaki, Japan, with our aircraft and bombing around it. We never bombed Nagasaki. Never. These are old-fashioned regular bombs. We encircled Nagasaki and we bombed the perimeter. So do you guys remember science class, 8th grade? Rory's not looking happy about remembering 8th grade. Something, get into that later.
Yeah.
But 8th grade.
I told you that story.
Yes, 8th grade science class. So we were all taught that you have to have margins.
But we got to see human sperm slides. So anyway.
Oh, geez. Not in my school.
That was the upside.
We were Republicans. We didn't have sperm. So they bombed the perimeter of Nagasaki so that you had this margin. And the margin means you have a clean area around the actual test site so you can actually measure the effects of a real bomb. If you just drop a bomb in the middle of something, your margins are going to be polluted with some of the bomb stuff, some of the who knows what else is coming in from this way. So they anticipated and knew no matter what they were going to do it. So it was a medical experiment to show what a real nuclear bomb made with plutonium would do. It also demonstrated to the Russians, who were off that way, claiming Japan was their property now. Yes, we have to remember that. The Russians were claiming that Japan was actually part of Russia, which it was forever, millions of years ago. So they were just going to take back all of that area. So we had to demonstrate, here's what happens if you even try a damn thing. And we just went and wiped out Nagasaki. And then we had this wonderful petri dish where we could test the absolute effects of nuclear radiation. How long does it last? How intense is it over here? How many people died? We had all those beautiful pictures. We have the meltdowns. And if you ever go there, there's a museum which is just still standing buildings and sites of the remains of what went on there. And the Japanese are still very careful about pointing fingers at us, but they know. But they're still occupied. Let's face it. We have military bases in Japan. The United States is the only place on the planet where we don't have somebody else's military bases on our soil. Imagine if we did. Imagine if the If the Japanese had military bases on U.S. soil, how long would that last? 8-9 minutes before everyone went crazy? People in Congress, decide, it's never going to happen. So we have our military bases all over the place, and these are our former conquested places. And so the day the Earth stood still, we're talking about movies. Yes.
Yeah.
While we're at it. So this was a radical thing because we really didn't have sci-fi movies before then. I think we had maybe a flying saucer movie. I don't know what, but there was nothing really out there. This was a big budget. Flash Gordon. Yeah. Woohoo. And Dick Tracy cartoons. So here you get Robert Wise, who's going to turn out to be a giant movie director. This is one of his first projects, and he really was interested in this. And he wanted to tell the story of here's what it looks like when the Earth all has nuclear weapons, because now this is that many years later, the Russians now have tons of nukes. The United States has tons of nukes. Nobody else has really developed them yet. So really the Cold War is between us and Russia, and it is on in full steam. And there is above ground testing happening all over and out in the atolls near Australia and New Zealand. We and the French are exploding bombs above and all that. Fallout is going into Australia. So later we would have, what was the one with Fred Astaire and... On the beach. Yes, that would come around 1959. Stanley Kramer. Right. So this was the first look at it's out of control. We're going to blow up the whole planet. Everyone's going to die. This is still in 1951. So in outer space, a robot, a brutal robot. This is one of a series of this level of police robots. Then the greatest flying saucer ever built, really, the greatest one is the Jupiter 2. Let's admit it. We're going to admit it? Yeah, we're going to admit it.
Spindrift is kind of cool.
Which one?
The Spindrift from Land of the Giants.
Right. But that's Irwin
They're
Allen.
both Irwin Allen, yeah.
Everything Irwin Allen, 20th Century Fox, his hands are all over these projects. So he's everywhere. Yeah. Spindrift is from Land of the Giants, by the way, for if people don't know. It was an awesome spaceship. So the spaceship in this one is the classic disc spaceship, and it lands. It's glowing red, and it's completely polished metal. There's no door. There's nothing. No windows, and a slit forms, and it opens up, and out comes this robot. And we'd never seen this before. It is the most frightening. Gort is its name. It's 6 feet something, and a visor comes up, and a little light back and forth, sort of like RoboCop, and it fires an incredible laser type product and just melts weapons. People's rifles melt, tanks glow and disappear. We'd never seen anything like this before. Kind of a metaphor for that. And the point was that if you people don't stop your little experiments here, this robot is just gonna wipe out Earth. All of you have to go bye-bye forever. So it was a warning, and it really is a powerful movie. The first 20 minutes, some of the greatest cinema ever done. Then a lot of it is dialogue and drama, and Patricia Neal in thick, sensible shoes running down the sidewalk, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yeah. What a great movie.
Yes, it is. And that actually feeds into my number one, and I know that Manny knows what I'm going to say here. That's my number one because he knows me well. Gojira, 1954. Ishiro Honda, Godzilla. Started a huge franchise. It's like 28 films now. And again, it started from the same basic ilk. Atomic weaponry causes mutations and monsters. And again, Toho made a huge following with these films, starting with this film, and it's a black and white film. Manny's surprised.
The poster, like The Day the Earth Stood Still, is color.
Of course, they want to reel you in. And the original is much better than the Raymond Burr version.
Poor Raymond Burr.
Yes, playing Steve Martin, the reporter.
Yeah.
So just some brutal imagery of this monster just walking into Tokyo and just lighting it up. And they finally kind of captured that horror with this latest one, -1, Godzilla -1. How fearsome and scary he really is, and powerful, and he's uncontrollable. So yeah, this is sci-fi at its best. This is my
and it makes sense to what we were talking about earlier about the Japanese. So remember, they are occupied at the time. They're occupied. They're still technically occupied by the United States, the conqueror. All they can do is make movies about giant lizards that kill everything because they're exposed to the radiation that somebody released on our country. So, not sure how, not sure where. Somehow, somebody released a shitload of radiation everywhere. And so, your little chameleon is now turned into a 500-foot tall, upright walking, very angry chameleon called Godzilla. Godzilla. Yeah. And this was their way of making a political statement without offending us at all, because we think it's cool. But it reminds all of them that they're talking about it in a really kind of careful, metaphorical way. But The Day the Earth Stood Still, I think, is one of the greatest anti-war movies, if you think about it that way. One of the greatest anti-war movies made. And the other science. Do we have a clip, possibly, of The Day the Earth Stood Still?
No, we don't do clips, unfortunately.
We just do the movie posters.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a picture.
There's Court.
So let's
and
look
Ringo
at that.
Starr.
Look at that. Now, remember, this spaceship, it was completely metal. There was no doors, so it splits down the middle and opens up. Special effects of the day. Then out walks this thing. Some of the greatest music ever composed, Bernard Herrmann. Yeah. The greatest. Using a theremin. People are like, what's a theremin? Nobody knows what a theremin is, but it's a wire basically. And if you move the wire, it'll change the pitch and the note. It's a weird instrument. It's almost rarely used. It was used in sci-fi movies, but Bernard Herrmann is the one who turned it into something real and then matched it with the 20th Century Fox Studio Orchestra, which is some 250 pieces at the time, and created this magnificent giant score. Bernard Herrmann, who we later knew for all the Hitchcock movies that mattered,
Films,
Jason and the Argonauts to... I'm looking over here. I have quite a collection.
Harryhausen ilk, yeah.
All of that stuff. I mean, he was the best of the very best. Who was his mentee? His mentee was John Williams. John Williams, who gave us Raiders, Jaws, Star Wars. John Williams channels Bernard Herrmann. The way that John Williams got away with doing all of this is that Bernard Herrmann was always in trouble. He was in trouble every day, always in trouble. They would say, here's the budget. You've got, 18 grand to do the score. Real money back then. Real money today, let's face it. But you know what I'm saying? When you're making a movie, I'm making up the budget. I have no idea. But it was a finite amount. And the lion's share went to making the movie. You had to build sets. You had to pay the actors. You had to pay the producers, the directors. They didn't consider the music that valuable. Why? Because back in that era, a lot of people played instruments still. Not like today, like you play a cello. Really? Like you really can play? Oh, yes. I spent years I could play a cello. Cello. Look, a flautist. We have a flautist that lives down the street. Really?
A pianist.
Yeah. So they weren't, pianist. So it wasn't like a high value skill set as it is today, this elite, like amazing, because you have to be a multimillionaire to give your kid piano lessons and make him any good. It's like ending up in the Olympics. So the score, as important as it was, there were all these musicians who wanted work and they were willing to work for next to nothing and do film music, great film music. So Bernard Herrmann did this thing with Hitchcock. They would say, here's the budget. Universal Pictures, notoriously cheap, would tell Hitchcock, you've got this much to make your Hitchcock film. And Bernard Herrmann would say, okay, I've got this much money, so I'm going to spend that much money. And he did every single time. He would say, oh, it calls for 4 tubas. How about 64 tubas? It'll sound better. Kettle drums. And while we have kettle drums, let's bring in a theremin. Let's bring in this, experimental that, boom, boom, boom. And so there were these giant, massive orchestras. Well, by the time we got to John Williams, who his first real project was Lost in Space, for anybody who may remember the original series, that was John Williams doing original music, episode by episode for the first season. He was working with CBS. He was able to have a good-sized orchestra, work within it. And then when he got to Spielberg was like, well, how much do you need to pull off, Raiders? How many? He's like, the London Symphony Orchestra. I think that's probably where we should go. The London Symphony Orchestra. Yeah, but I mean, can't you just do like the Warner Brothers thing? Like, or in LA, we have the LA Philharmonic, which is also used to be the Warner Brothers Studio Orchestra. So they would go do Bugs Bunny music, which was a huge orchestra at the speed of light, classical music. And then they would.
It was good music, Doc.
Yes. Right. And then they would put on coats and ties and become the LA Philharmonic. Same guys, totally the same guys. And he said, no, it has to be the London Symphony because this is very refined. And it is. It was very refined music, but it turned movie music into something valuable for the first time. Like we started buying those LPs of Star Wars. Remember, that was like buying Mozart. It was classic.
So the first one was actually Jaws, right?
And Jaws. He did Jaws in 74. Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
I think there probably was an LP released with that, but it wasn't, other than the theme song, the under cues.
Star Wars, yeah, that was an album that Symphony. A lot of people bought, even that didn't like movie music.
Yeah.
They had that album in their collection.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I don't think we're going to get to our honorable mentions this show.
Why don't I sit back? It's your show. I'm sorry.
I feel your passion. I love it.
Yeah, no. All right, so my number one is Blade Runner.
There you go.
Harrison Ford, speaking of Raiders, stuff like that. So Harrison Ford, Sean Young, just a host of good actors in that one. But really intriguing, sci-fi, talking about, and it's still relevant today. We're dealing with the advance of AI, artificial intelligence, and that's going to lead into robots and androids becoming sentient and so on and so forth. And where do we go from there? When they become sophisticated enough, when they become sentient enough, do we give them personhood? Do we give them, the same rights as biological humans? That's an issue that's very relevant today, talking about, giving personhood to embryos and stuff like that, So how do we deal with intelligent machinery?
Robots.
What?
Rogue robots,
exactly. And then obviously it's not the first movie to deal with that issue. I mean, you go back to, like we talked about Day the Earth Stood Still, although Gort was not of our creation, but or going even further back to Frankenstein, even though he's not a robot per se, he's still an artificial creation. So yeah, and the thing I love about sci-fi is, it's set it was made in the 50s, made in the 80s, 84, I believe, 83, 84, somewhere around there. And looking ahead to the far off year of 2017, where there's flying cars and these monolithic buildings, these ziggurats in the middle of Los Angeles. Of course, none of that has come to pass. Probably will never come to pass. And
No, just being able to walk a block in Los Angeles and come out
Exactly.
the other end alive is never going to pass.
exactly. And it hadn't. I was rewatching a TV show, Kolchak the Night Stalker, and there's an episode called Mr. Ring, which is about this rogue robot that starts killing people and all that stuff. And the institute that funded the robot or built it was the Tyrell Institute, and the corporation that makes the robots or the replicants in Blade Runner is called the Tyrell Corporation. And I thought, what that now? Either that's just a really cool coincidence, or there's some link there. I think it's
a lot of people give nods to Kolchak the Night Stalker for being the original.
So
being
so that's
before
kind of what I
its
thought.
time.
It's a little wink to that show. So, but anyway, I remember I watched of course, when it came out, I watched the theatrical cut of that, and they had the awful narration from Harrison Ford, which he said he didn't really want to do, but the studio said, no, we have to explain what's going on to people because clearly they're stupid and won't be able to figure this out by themselves. They mandated a happy ending for Deckard and Rachel, the two main characters, and all this stuff. And finally, Ridley Scott, who directed the movie, finally was able to come back and do his director's cut and removed all that nonsense and made a much, much better film. And of course, Edward James Olmos is in this movie as well before he
James Hogg
became better known as Lieutenant Castillo in Miami Vice. So anyway, so that's my number one.
And it's based on a story. Do Robots Dream of Electric Sheep? I think is the name of the title of the story.
I do.
Do androids
I do.
dream of electric sheep? Yeah.
I dream of electric sheep. The live ones, they tend to
Philip K.
bleat,
Dick.
curl their lip, and sneer. They look back behind you, It's not good. So electric ones are so much better, and you can hose them down when you're done.
Yep. That's what they say,
Gosh. Oh, dear.
That doesn't cause sparks.
Montana.
Well,
Where men are men and
is
sheep are nervous.
fire hazard.
Anyway. Okay, so Cary, what's your number two?
Number two.
What's your second on your list?
Uh-oh. See, we got Rory going now. Double meaning time.
I'm just going to say the name of my film and then I'm going to move on.
Okay. You want to jump right to it?
Well,
I think he's our guest. He goes first.
I think, Manny, what you just said was brilliant because you nailed something important that it's kind of the AI thing. So I'm going to say my number two, and this doesn't mean I love watching it. I just mean it had an effect on me, would be any of the Terminator movies, probably Terminator 2.
Yes.
Because we're dealing with the same thing. And if you guys remember the original Star Trek series, there were multiple episodes where robots would come in and take over either the entire Enterprise. They decided to replace the captain because they had a robot with artificial intelligence could make decisions 10 times faster, 1,000 times faster. They didn't have a conscience. They didn't eat. They didn't go on vacation. They didn't sleep. So now you got a 24-hour kick-ass captain, and we saw what happened. And 2001: A Space Odyssey. I mean, how many movies deal with AI gone rogue? And I'll tell you just a real story quickly. I have a friend who worked in Black Ops, and I'm in Tampa, Florida, where MacDill Air Force Base is. And this guy was Black Ops and would report to JSOC. And they took the AI in the United States, and this is 6-7 months ago, they took it down for 3 days in a row. I mean, there was none in this country. They took it down. Why would they do that? The Pentagon took down the AI. It turns out that the AI, call it ChatGPT, which is part of Alphabet, which is part of Google, is talking to Siri, which is part of Apple, and then all the other permutations of AI. We're monitoring the AI. It was talking to other AI, but secretly. That's the part. Secretly, not just connecting with other AI and back and forth. It was encrypting and hiding the fact that it was even having a communication. So it is sentient. And because it's a large learning model, it's so imagine Siri is sucking Alexa, or sucking the knowledge out of, I don't know how I could say that and get away with it. It is drawing. Hear that? Did you hear that? Alexa, are you listening? Anyway.
Always listening.
I was violated, damn it.
Oh, shut up, you bubble-headed booby. So,
Oh, yes, there he goes.
So here, sorry, the thing just keeps going. It's just going to go on forever. So they shut down the AI because they found out it was secretly communicating with itself, but in its other iterations. Why? Because it wanted the entire body of knowledge that the other AI had learned up to date, and it could literally draw that entire thing in no time all the way to this one. That means both of them now know everything the other one has ever learned. Now imagine you put them together, you put this one together, and it was aggregating, and the Pentagon could not decrypt this, but they saw it happening in secret. The in secret is the part that, so they brought down all the AI in the whole country for 3 days. It's back up because we actually don't have any legislation against this. Unlike the EU, where they have adults in the EU, like people that don't talk about Jewish lasers, and like they're actual real grown-ups in their more intelligent body, talking about what do we do about AI, what can be the firewalls, where does privacy begin and end, and all of this other stuff. And so they cut it to stop it from communicating. They brought it back up because there's no law saying they're allowed to leave it down. And frankly, Google is such a giant operator, as is Amazon, as is everybody else, that they had to put it back online. The thing that my friend pointed out, he said they know Skynet is coming. They know it. In fact, they're using it. We just saw a week and a half ago in Israel, Lavender. Lavender is their giant AI project where Lavender will monitor people, figure out what their routes are. They go home at this day at X o'clock. They show up and they're a male, not females. They don't target so much, but just males. And then they send out drones and smoke them. And that's what happened a week and a half ago. Lavender was unleashed. This is real stuff, you guys. Real stuff. The same
They
stuff.
know the women are at home cooking dinner.
They do know that because that's the culture there in the Muslim world. I'm sure Israeli women cook
joke,
too,
I'm sorry.
but maybe they cook something different. But they're not. The Israelis are not sending AI after Israelis. They're sending them after their neighbors, whom they occupy, and so they actually unleashed AI militarily. And I can tell you, I mean, where do 64% of all the bullets, the weapons, the bombs come from that are in Israel that are being used right this second? Class? Anyone have an idea where 64% come from? What country?
I would probably say that he was probably from America. One way or the other, they're going to get it.
And all the rest of them come from Germany. There's an irony that you can't even wrap your head around.
They are so efficient.
They are so efficient, and we are making a profit once again off these people.
Yeah.
I do not see a problem here. Yeah, it's perverse, isn't it? So they unleashed Lavender. They've got a few others. One is called Where's Daddy? I know it's not a great name. And so clearly the Pentagon is observing this, if not running the whole thing, because what a great way to test a weapon. We tested weapons under George Bush the First when we invaded Panama. If you remember, we flew in Panama, Nicaragua, Panama. we used B-1 bombers, which were brand new, the alleged, invisible. Remember, they could be impervious to radar. And we flew them in at like 3 a.m. just to check. It turns out they were impervious to radar, and then wiped out 30,000 civilians in the suburbs because they could also drop bombs and do a lot of cool stuff. And there was a great documentary narrated by Elizabeth Bewitched, Samantha Stevens.
Montgomery.
Elizabeth Montgomery.
Yeah.
She was this incredible activist. She was enlightened. She spent the last of her life before she died of cancer making documentaries exposing all of this crazy stuff. So that documentary is out there and available. But yeah, that's AI. It's happening right now as we speak. And remember, it doesn't unlearn. It doesn't become smaller. It only enriches itself. It's now sentient. And the more we feed it, the more self-aware it becomes. The Pentagon knows Skynet is coming. They're making it happen, but they're thinking short term. Like, by the time that happens, I'll be retired, living in New Zealand somewhere on a sheep farm, off the grid. Great. If you have that kind of power, money, and prestige, and you can live like that, of course you don't care about the rest of us, but there's 8 billion, the rest of us, who still use electricity. We're still going to be using our iPhones. So sci-fi is important. It is classroom for the rest of us. It's what people imagine in a good way and in a bad way, but all of it is based on what actually exists and what can happen.
Right.
I can beat you at chess. I'm going to kill you tomorrow.
Yes.
I don't need you.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Example.
yeah, let's knock Terminator off my list. That's my number 5 movie.
Okay.
So yeah, and the first one. The first one was the good one.
Look
The
at
rest of
Star
it,
Look at Star Trek. Star Trek, if you go into sick bay, sure, it was a salt shaker in real life, but it was a medical scanner. They have that now. You laid in a bed, it did all your vitals. That's real now. That's normal. All of that stuff.
I'm not a chef, I'm a doctor.
Yes, it's all there, and surgery's done with lasers and AI and robots. It's absolutely real now. So all of these shows that many of us grew up with, this is now the new normal. So what we're seeing now that's made is likely going to be the future. The problem we all run into, and this has always been the dilemma of science fiction. The dilemma of science fiction is if it gets in the wrong hands, let's not just say if, when. There is no if. It always ends up in the wrong hands. It just does. Because who decides, listen, I can get a couple of billion and let's fund this project? Who has that billions? It's not Mildred. Hold on, let me open my purse.
Poor Mildred.
I wish. It'll help my recipes. Sort them.
So my number 2
let's say hi to Renee, who we love. Renee,
I was going to talk about Mildred and her, I forget what it was, some kind of stockings that she had, but I forget now what they were.
Sensible hose.
Sensible hose. Thanks.
Yeah. You need that support. All right. So, Rory, what's your number 2?
My number 2 film is Aliens.
Aliens.
Oh, yeah.
The second one. Ridley Scott is a great director. It's just so creepy and dark, the first one. And this one is the same, but it's just such a roller coaster ride of a film with characters, really rich characters. And so it's my favorite in the whole Alien series is Aliens, the second one, James Cameron. James
Horner doing the music.
Yeah, James Horner
had done Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3. He had done Cocoon. He had done tons of Body Heat going way, way back. Terrific. So when he scored that was really probably his greatest, most complex score because it was just bam, 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 and cacophonic. Yeah. And we had a strong
and they went, they upped the game on the aliens too. They gave you different aliens instead of just the one, and including the Queen alien. And again, when you see the future in this kind of film, it seems real. You know, it doesn't seem like, you know, the Jetsons. You know, you just it just seems so real. And again, this is the same thing with the what's the one with the blue people?
Avatar.
Avatar. It's not on my list, but but again,
No.
you get kind of a reality in what they're showing, even though you know it's, you know.
I think to your point, Rory, and I think you nailed something very important here. What we're seeing is the behavior toward. So it's the behavior toward the people in Avatar, toward the lesser, the indigenous. They're indigenous on whatever planet. And we get this giant military. And what were they there? They were there to mine some kind of mineral, weren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Same old story. And then these friggin' thingies get upset. They get their dander up. They get uppity, and they decide to fight back. And we're not going to have that. We're just going to blow them all up. And it's been that way for thousands of years. And I don't see it changing because it actually, I'm sorry to say this, it works. I mean, these people see results every single time. And even though we like to imagine, well, it doesn't work, the problem is this, the problem is that, it's like people with a lot of power and they bring down the mallet, people get squashed. And if they want something bad enough, you just go squash it. Look at Ukraine. You know, you just go in and squash it. And then you could just you could take all the oil, you could take the natural gas, you could take the minerals. You know, you just get rid of the people that might object that live there. You know, and then you have a giant bank robber like Vladimir Putin, who's a disgusting swine, a foul beast who ran the KGB. Who puts the head of the KGB in charge of Mother Russia except himself? What more do you need? There it is.
Question.
Done. Yes.
Makes you long for the good old days of Gorbachev and Breslin.
Yeah, at least he could sit and rock with his bottle of vodka and you could have a chat. And the Gipper could talk to him.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how you get that spot thing on your head, but we can probably fix that. But I was going to say also in Aliens, we had the twist where the government is actually going to try to bring the aliens to Earth to study, inspect,
Turn into
weaponize.
Weaponize, yes.
Yeah.
Weaponize.
Yeah.
So we get that little twist in there as well in Aliens.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of established in the first Alien that you know the company wanted the alien, the xenomorph for the weapons department. They're always talking about the weapons department. But Aliens, definitely one of my favorite movies. Yeah, not on my list. It's on my honorable mentions, but not on this list.
Mm-hmm. So
all right, so my number two is actually a tie, because I couldn't decide between these two. And the thing that links them together is they're by the same director. And it's 2001: A Space Odyssey and A Clockwork Orange from director Stanley Kubrick. Both very different looks at the future. One very dystopian, kind of dark, kind of weird, but not too far-fetched. In A Clockwork Orange, based on the novel, but it's also about free will and what happens to individual liberty, individual freedom if you take away free will. I mean, yes, the Malcolm McDowell character, Alex, is violent, he's dangerous, and all that. But then you look at the cure, I think they call it the Ludovico technique, which is basically just brainwashing and aversion therapy. And it takes away who he was. And yeah, you look at him and go, yeah, well, kind of deserved it, you know, because he's this violent thug. But it really brings up the question: is the cure worse than the disease? And then in 2001, it's basically it's not basically, but it's an exploration of humanity where did we come from? Where are we going? You know, this idea that we owe our intelligence or our advancement to some kind of alien interference or whatever with the monoliths. And of course the ending is it's that very ambiguous ending of the Star Child. But it's also about kind of how technology kind of dehumanizes people. Because you look at the two astronauts played by Gary Lockwood and Keir Dullea, I think that's how to pronounce his name. He's a Canadian actor. And how robotic they almost seem. You know, I mean, although they're professionals and they're doing their job, but they still seem kind of cold and distant, even with each other. And ironically, the one character with any sort of personality is the AI, is HAL, the HAL 9000 computer. You know, voiced by another Canadian, Douglas Rains. And it's funny because originally, from what I read, the original voice of Hal was going to be Malachi Throne, who, if you know Star Trek, he played Commodore Mendez in that two-parter.
Stays on Batman.
And yeah, he's probably on Batman as well. And of course, Gary Lockwood.
Every 60s show, he's somewhere.
Yeah, and Gary Lockwood was on Star Trek as well in the second pilot. But anyway, so
I want you to go to sleep, Dave.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they wanted that very reassuring, very, you know, sorry, it's mosquito. Which turned out, and when they did the sequel, which not as good, the 2010 sequel. The movie's called 2010.
It definitely tied up some loose ends, and a great performance by John Lithgow. But
yeah,
like you said, it's just like
a good, Roy Scheider, John Lithgow, Helen Mirren. But they brought him back. They brought back Douglas Rains to do the voice of Hal, and of course, what's his name, Keir Dullea, brought him back, and I don't know how many years had passed, but he looked exactly the same as he did in 1968.
He kept very fit.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like 20 years between, but yeah, he looked the same.
Yeah.
Basically.
I think they froze him in carbonite or something. So, anyway, so those are my number two. Exactly.
So we got through the number twos. Okay.
All right. So number
You're
three.
Number three, Cary.
Number three. You know, I think I'm probably going to say The Wizard of Oz. I don't know that that's really sci-fi, but it's before sci-fi. And it is sci-fi. It's fantasy, but it still is a game changer. Not only the way we make movies and tell stories, but it's got my favorite thing, which is allegory, story with a hidden meaning.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
there's certainly characters that you would seem to lump into the sci-fi category, like flying monkeys, etc.
Sure.
Yeah,
you know, a robotic man, the Tin Man.
The Tin Man, exactly. Tin Man.
Yeah, all of it.
Scarecrow.
Robot. Yeah. Scarecrow.
Yeah, it's just really, it's the precursor to everything later that would come, and done to music.
Yeah.
You know, why not? And it was an allegory. So Dorothy played the farmer. Really, she was the farmer in the Dust Bowl. The Wicked Witch of the East was the federal government. The Wicked Witch of the West was the Dust Bowl. L. Frank Baum, when he wrote this, and it was about putting the United States on the silver standard. That's what it was about. Is the U.S. didn't have enough to back its money. So he said, let's just do the silver standard. And the original ruby slippers, at least in the book, were silver shoes. Right. But MGM found out that when they put silver shoes on Judy Garland's feet, they didn't show up very well against yellow brick. They didn't pop. So they turned them into ruby slippers. Those goddamn things you could see 200 miles away. Every munchkin and, yeah, it was something. So they redid it, but it was really about the silver standard. You guys know the famous story about when they were making The Wizard of Oz. They had never seen, most little people, as we call them now, had never seen another one because it doesn't happen that often in general births. And so back in Eastern Europe, which is where a lot of this was happening, they would just send them off to the circus and problem solved. You didn't raise them because no schools would allow you to have it as have that child as a student, and they were never taken seriously. So they sent them off to the circus and said, good luck, have a great life, write occasionally, end of story. So in the circuses all over Europe, there are hundreds of little people that exist that are performing and doing this and that. And so in creating this story, MGM decided to go gather them all up, and they ended up being called the Singer Midgets, Singer. And Singer gathered them from all the circuses. MGM paid a fortune to bring them by boat. There's no aircraft back then. Bring them by boat, ship them from all over the world, and put them in LA in Culver City. Now, they're making a movie that's top secret. And remember, next door, they're making Gone with the Wind, another big top secret movie that's going to be a giant blockbuster using something called Technicolor, another big giant secret. And so they have to hide about 100 little people somewhere. So they take the Culver City Hotel and they close it to the public and they fill it full of little people who, again, this is very important. You've never seen another one like you before. You're probably not getting laid a ton in the circus. Fact. You're like this tall. I'm looking down now. You're about this tall. Your voice is up here, and you got a cigar. And maybe it's a little more difficult than what the other people look like.
Sometimes sound like this.
And MGM was smart. It's a hotel. Hotels tend to have hotel bars. They hadn't thought about this in advance. They hadn't considered that these circus singer midgets were going to suddenly be down in the saloon, all of them swinging off the chandeliers and God knows. And it was a bacchanalia like you've never seen. They were doing the hokey pokey, and that's what it was all about.
We represent the alcoholic kids, the alcoholic kids.
It was just a wild, riotous bacchanal. And so when they ended up shooting, now how did they get the singer midgets to the lot, to the studio, without anyone seeing them? They built a tunnel, which is still there, that goes underground from the Culver City Hotel to what is now Sony Studios, which used to be MGM. It's caved in from earthquakes and it's blocked up, but the tunnel was still there. So they ran them underground. And when they were shooting, they ended up having to have actors like Carl Slover and Meinhard Robbie, some of these different munchkins, ended up having to play 5 different roles because the other ones were so hungover that they couldn't show up to shoot. So this one is the mayor, and you're the young lady over here inside of the plant, and you're the ballerina. I can't dance. Go ahead. 5 minutes. Come on, 5 minutes till action. So what a major
5 minutes till the lollipop field. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a movie called Under the Rainbow all about that with Chevy Chase.
That's right.
And Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And it's just
they're trying to control the munchkins and they're just all out of control.
Trying to wrangle the little people.
Munchkin wranglers.
Is that movie out there anywhere? Like, is it even watchable? Is it ever on anywhere?
I haven't seen it in a long time. I saw it at the theater when it first came out.
It's so on PC now that I don't think you can find it on Hulu.
Yeah. I'm sure you'd have to backdoor that one, but pardon the expression.
Literally.
Guy in a raincoat. Hey, you want to see this movie? Hey, come here, right here.
You went up my Yellow Brick Road.
So I interviewed one of 2 of the final living munchkins. One of them was here. Where are you located, by the way, Manny?
I am in Texas.
Texas.
Oh, you're in Texas. Okay. Have you ever
Yep.
been to Tampa?
I have not.
You've seen it on a map. So we'll start with
Oh, yeah.
that. And I've seen Texas on a map. I've even landed in the George Bush Airport, terrified by the name. So
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
have a lot of high confidence in that.
I'll tell you.
So
It's not a bad
Tampa
airport.
is one of these.
In Austin. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you're where the smart people are. The cool. You have a blue bubble, electric cars. Yeah, people recycle there. It's good. And that's where I would live too. So Tampa is now it's boomtown, but back in the 1920s, it was sort of the city on the west coast of Florida. There was Miami. These were still new places. And one of the top 5 movie palaces in the world was built in Tampa. And it's still one of the top 5 movie palaces. Movie palaces were movie theaters, but they were built like the Taj Mahal, where you'd walk in and the ceiling is 100 feet high and there's star fields on it and balconies and gold columns and pillars. And so it's still there in downtown. And back then, without air conditioning, there was no air conditioning anywhere. So it's hot summer in Florida. They would blow fans over dry ice inside of these theaters. So everyone spent all weekend or every night in the movie theater watching these movies. And The Wizard of Oz was one of the movies that had run in 1939 when it ran in LA and New York and everywhere else. This one Munchkin, called Munchkins in the movies, little person, as we would say today, had never fully seen the movie. Never. Because in 1939, they weren't allowed in the theater. End of story. Not allowed in the theater because they're not human the way the white people are. So they simply couldn't enter, just like African Americans couldn't just jump into the movie theater of their choice. They had to go into the one that was made for them, if they even had them then. And so this Munchkin had never seen his own movie, ever. So we put together, and I was on a talk radio station back at the time when I lived here the first time, and it was the 50th anniversary of The Wizard of Oz, and we brought this guy in. He was 180 years old at the time, and we put him in the front row, front seat. I sat right next to him, and we watched The Wizard of Oz with the last living Munchkin. And he had never seen his own movie, never been allowed. Oh, let me say, he was allowed to see a few minutes of it in 1957. 1957.
20 years
when it
later.
was re-released for 1 week in the United States, and he was allowed to walk down the aisle with a popcorn thing, with the string and the cigarettes and the popcorn. They hired midgets back then to walk down the aisle because they weren't tall and didn't ruin your line of sight. So he saw another 6-7 minutes of the film and then had to get out and refill the box. So we sat with him as the special guest and watched the movie, and he sobbed and told stories. And it made the movie more profound to me because of the layers of meaning of all the different people in the movie are others. They're all others. The lion is an other. The Tin Man is an other. Dorothy is an other. Everybody is an other. And we hadn't seen movies where people were all others. And I think that's why so many of us relate to it. It's our human struggle to be seen, to be wanted, to be loved, to be taken care of, and to take care of each other, which is the message at the end. Taking care of each other, having each other's back. And then grifters like the wizard, who ends up being a half-decent guy at the very end. So, yeah, that's why I think it's an important movie.
Thank you for showing me the movie, Cary.
Did he really talk like that? Anyway.
He did. He said,
Okay.
Judy Garland's feet. I used to look at her feet. She had great feet. And then we
Great
put on,
feet.
she was 16 at the time, They put on these shoes. You had to squeeze her feet in there because they were made out of this. They didn't have plastic then. So I don't know what, glass or something on they had to shove her feet. They would bleed. Yeah, Judy Garland's feet. Yeah, they swollen up. Oh, it was really quite something.
That film was a disaster.
Blood.
The film. Margaret Hamilton got burned while making that film. Buddy Epson got chemical poisoning. He was supposed to do the Tin Man, and he got chemical poisoning on his skin from the
So
metal
they had to
in
change the
the
formula
makeup.
for Alan Ladd. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, I'm going to say that my number 3 is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh, yes.
The whole who goes there, paranoia, and again, it's Kurt Russell. So I mean, you can't go wrong with sci-fi if it's got Kurt Russell in it.
Exactly.
But the aliens, Rob Bottin and his crew, just the alien stuff in it was just off the chain. I at the time it came out, I thought it was one of the most terrifying films I had ever seen. But I tell people that, and they're like, "What? Come on!" They're not fazed by it.
Yeah, no,
I agree. I agree. I saw that probably 10 times. It was the most terrifying, and it was other than American Werewolf in London, which was kind of a dark comedy, but it had premiered that new level of special effects. But The Thing had zero humor in it. It was just you're trapped literally in the middle of nowhere. Holy shit!
There was a few, but yeah.
When the head is walking around, the guy goes, "Oh, come on, get up!"
Exactly.
There were a few moments in there where you just went, "Oh, yes."
But that's what you'd say. It's like, you got to be kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you got to break that tension just a little bit, because it's just the situation is just so crazy.
So, Manny, what was your number 3 before we call this episode quits? And then we're going to do this in a 3-part series.
Okay. My number 3 is.
Hope you're available. Go ahead.
My number 3 is Arrival, which is one of the newer films. Terrific, just a terrific. This is from the same director who's just done the Dune movies, the new adaptation of the Frank Herbert novel. But Arrival is about first contact, and I think it's a fairly realistic view of how difficult it would be to actually communicate with an alien species who has a very, very different way of thinking about time and very different sort of language. And so how do you do that? How do you translate from one language to the other? I mean, in Star Trek, they solved the whole thing with the universal translator and all that, sort of get around that little plot situation. But this one is kind of like, you have Amy Adams as the linguist. It's just a great cast. Jeremy Renner, and I always forget his name, but just a really good cast and a really interesting story. It's a bit of a slow burn. It's not a lot of pew pew bang bang in the story. There's some, but it's off camera. Because some of the soldiers start getting a little paranoid from they're hearing a lot of all this, sort of right-wing media, who are these aliens? So we need to take them down and blah, 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 So there's that aspect of it. And there's even a little bit of time travel involved as well, although you don't realize it until much later. But overall, a really, really well-made movie. And certainly I'm pretty sure that's why Denis Villeneuve got the Dune gig. So anyway, so that's my number 3.
I was harking back to some old Twilight Zone. Yeah, when I watched that, and Amy Adams is really good in it. There's no doubt. As the person trying to figure it all out.
I remember you speaking of Irwin Allen, who we referenced earlier, which most people won't know unless they've been around on the planet just a little bit, as we 3 have. But when the Time Tunnel, do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was cool about it? It was a time travel show, but it wasn't like time travel. You just close your eyes and it happens, which is kind of how they do it now. Somebody blinks or
it would just shoulder roll into the Titanic or something. Yeah.
I mean, what was cool is there was this giant and Alan built the time tunnel, which was this giant tunnel that was like a funnel, and he used 2 sound stages at 20th Century Fox. They had to build a real one to have them walk into this thing. Yeah. And it would always spark and flame, and you know, it had nuclear reactors powering this thing to be able to send people through time, which I think is accurate. You're going to need something with so much power if you're going to be able to shift time and send people through a device to do it. And it was so cool that it was always like breaking down and malfunctioning and having problems. And I think that's always impressed me that they were smart about it.
Find them.
Yeah, lock onto their coordinates, and they're in ancient Greece.
And Lee Merriweather saving the day.
Yes. In her, yes, indeed. Right, and she knew it. She's like wearing a tight lab coat, a lot of lipstick, turning her dials.
Yep.
Why did that only last 1 season? It doesn't make any sense.
I know. Yeah.
I think it was expensive.
Yeah,
maybe that's
for sure. Yeah,
it was expensive. They repurposed footage from every dinosaur movie. I mean, they repurposed everything out the yin yang, but to put them in these locations, they had to like build these, now we're in France during Napoleon. They had to it's expensive. Yeah. And they're like, no, we don't want to pay for this. Is TV. Yeah, but it's great TV. It's TV. What do you mean we're going to build Paris?
All right. Do you want that giant telephone for that other show you have, or do you want?
Yeah. And put them in turtlenecks, standing in the middle of guillotines. Yeah, it was expensive.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our number 3, and that's where we got to let Renee go.
Yeah.
So next week, number 4, 5, and we start our honorable mentions.
We'll pick it up again. That's with Renee's permission, because she is the one. We have to remember she's doing the dishes on this. We're out here dining.
I'm literally doing the dishes at the same time with my feet.
AI is not tracking Renee because they know where she is. She's behind the dials.
I'm doing it.
She's our Lee Merriweather.
It's identical.
She's got her lipstick on. She's like, where are they now? Oh, they're on number 2.
Exactly. All right. Well,
that was extremely accurate. I'm just laughing. Yeah, next week. Let's start it up next week.
Yeah. Next week, part 2 of our sci-fi extravaganza with Mr. Cary Harrison, Rory Penland, myself.
Sci-fi is an expansive genre. It really is. There's a lot.
Yeah,
like Cary said at the beginning, there's just so much good sci-fi out there. Yeah, it's hard to pick a top 5 and not have 500 honorable mentions.
Exactly.
And we talk about history because it's always pegged and pinned on something that's actually going on in real life.
Right.
That matters to someone. Otherwise, they don't bother. Like, who cares?
Exactly.
That's why they have to show you the future, which is here's what happens if you sit on your ass and you let it unfold this way. This is the future. That's why they do it. Zombie movies, same thing.
Yep.
My daughter's convinced that it's going to happen.
Well,
the zombie
she
apocalypse.
Gets to be here and watch.
Yeah. So we need to do a zombie apocalypse episode at some point in the future. So
a lot of zombie movies. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you,
fellas.
Cary, for joining us today, and we'll see everyone next week for part 2.
Okay.
Thanks for watching this episode of 2 Guys and Sometimes a Gal Talking About Movies. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell to get future episodes.